Hey, babe.
Hey, babe.
How you doing?
I'm good.
How you doing? All right, so we are talking about the question that you get in particular the most today. We were contemplating clickbait, saying, how do I get my spouse to change? But we, just wouldn't have been the right thing to do, really.
But really, it is one of the most asked questions I get, because I think some people think that I had some kind of magic wand. Because your change was so drastic, people think that I did that.
Okay, so I am your client, and I ask you, I'm desperate. My spouse is gone. They've left for another person or for another lifestyle, or they just say they don't love me anymore. And I find you online, and I see your story, and like, oh my goodness, this dude was a nightmare and a drug addict and a serial adulterer and an alcoholic.
And now he's the most wonderful husband in the world and a doting father, and my children call me a princess because, daddy spoils mommy so much.
Oh, thank you for honoring me like that, babe. I really appreciate it. So I've come to you and I'm saying, please help me. Like, you changed your husband. How do I change my husband or wife? What's your answer?
You don't.
So this is what I paid for?
No.
I'm joking.
Well, this is the truth, is you don't change another person. But what I did was I changed me. And by changing me, that automatically created a dynamic change between us. So we were no longer in this toxic situation anymore. It wasn't what we wanted, or wasn't what I wanted, but at least it wasn't that craziness that it was before. And one of the things that it did, well, I think there's two things that it did. One is it created a safe environment for you to be able to reflect. I tell people all the time, someone who's in defensive mode, their shields are up. And when your shields are up, you can't reflect. You can't look at yourself in the mirror. You're too busy defending your actions to consider, is this really the right thing? And then the second thing is, and you can maybe speak on this, is that my changing gave you hope that you could change too. Because I know a lot of times we think, people don't change, and that person will never change. And I'm sure that was something that was in your head. Adele will never change. She will just always be controlling. She will never forgive me. And the hope is that when I did change, it started to give you hope that if Adele could do it, maybe I could do it too.
Yes, to all of the above. However, those things only matter to me post-reconciliation.
Okay.
So what's important to lay as a foundation is, you do the changes, you make the changes yourself for yourself, not so that your spouse will change. Because if your focus is there and it takes them really long, which a lot of our clients are long-term standards, right? And so you might be working on yourself for 6 months and going, but it's not working because he's not changing or she's not changing. And so you lose focus. So it's really important to focus on yourself and change, because you want to become the best version of yourself, and it means something to you, and you want to build a legacy that matters, and you don't want to carry the same rubbish that contributed to the downfall of your marriage or to the position that it's in now into your future. So that's really important. And also from my perspective, and hopefully this helps someone who's standing for their marriage, that from your spouse's perspective, I don't care that you're changing. I don't care. In fact, I don't want you to change.
Makes you angry.
It makes me angry for a bunch of reasons. Reason number one is, well, now, really, after all these years, now you decide to change. That's the first thing. The second reason is I'm trying to build a narrative, and we spoke about this in our last video. I'm trying to build a narrative about you to make you the bad guy, so that it justifies the fact that I'm leaving you, or I'm in love with somebody else, or whatever it is. So I'm quite uncomfortable, and it's an unpleasant experience for me to experience the changes in you. And so if you as a standing spouse are working on yourself and becoming kind and gentle and forgiving and accepting and working on yourself in some areas that we'll cover a little bit today, and you're met with opposition or anger, you run out of steam.
Yeah.
Right? So you cannot make these changes in order to try to change or affect your spouse. There is a natural outworking. If you change, to your point, and I love the point that you made. Why don't you talk a little bit about you have some analogies that are really good with regards to why the dynamic in a relationship changes when one person changes, and it only takes one.
Yeah. So it's funny how it came about, because I was seeing a therapist and I had spent a good 6 months complaining about you to this therapist. And then when I started to realize that I maybe, just maybe, was playing a role or playing a part in the downfall of this marriage, and my communication with my therapist changed. Like, okay, I understand that what Ren is doing is bad, but I'm also starting to understand that I wasn't all peaches and cream all the time. She tried to use this cauldron analogy with me, where she was basically explaining that our marriage is this cauldron, and I'm adding stuff that stinks and you adding stuff that stinks. And so you see the two of you are toxic and it'll just never work. And while she was explaining that, I thought to myself, what if I stopped adding stuff that stinks? Like what? I wonder what would happen then.
So good.
And so as I started working on this thing, I realized it's kind of like when you mix colors, right? So I'm mixing with red paint, and I've been mixing with red paint, and I pick red paint because it's angry and it's resentful and it's unforgiving. And you were mixing with blue paint, and the two of us together were always making purple. And so even though you didn't change a single thing, just the fact that I started to change, I started to heal my wounds, my color went from red to yellow. Now, red and yellow and blue is now going to make green. Green may not be the color that I want in our marriage, but at least it's not purple anymore. So it's interesting that it was kind of came about with someone trying to convince me to not stand, to convince me that we're toxic for each other. Yeah. But really, that's how it happens.
Yeah, it's really good. So there's a couple of things I want to say about that. The first thing is, with the greatest love and respect in the world, so many psychologists and therapists will say stuff like that. And I think they're well-meaning. And I don't want to knock these people, but there's hope for your marriage, man.
Yeah.
There's hope, and I can understand that those folks work with marriages that fall apart all the time, and they can't see the hope. And I just want to encourage people who are listening to, like, don't give up. It doesn't matter what your therapist or your pastor or your mom or your dad or your friends are saying. Don't listen to those voices.
Sometimes even your kids. My son was saying, enough already, kick him to the curb, get a new man, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to interject there and go, you do what the right thing is for you to do. Don't listen to outside voices. We're going to make another video on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other analogy, there were two other analogies that you used. The one is spirograph, the one is dancing. Talk us through spirograph.
So the spirograph is, I don't know, it's a children's toy from back in the day. I'm giving away our age now.
I'm going to find an image and stick it in the video.
Do that, yeah. So basically you put your pencil in a little hole and you run it around this gear, and the gear, because your pencil is like inserted into this hole, it creates this pattern because the hoop inside this thing moves. And so if you imagine two people are in the same holes and they're going round and round and round and round and round and round, just making the same pattern over and over and over again, it takes one person. Change your color, change your hole, change whatever, or it just takes one person, and that pattern is going to look different. I stopped meeting your like for like, your anger for anger, your frustration for frustration, or your the justifying. You justify why you feel the way, I justify why I feel the way, defensiveness, stonewalling, all of it. I stopped meeting you like for like, and I started meeting you. Started to become the person that I wanted to become, and I started to respond from that place.
That's really good.
This is who I want to be. I want to be someone who responds in a calm way, in a gentle way, in a loving way. I understand why he's angry. I understand that he's in pain. All that kind of stuff really helped. You said something earlier about doing this for yourself. And I will 100% admit that when I learned these concepts about working on yourself, I 100% did it to save the marriage. I was like probably every other woman. I don't know if men sort of feel the same way, but like every other woman on this planet whose spouse has strayed or is in love with someone else, and thought, okay, if I lose the weight, he will love me again. And the God honest truth was, it had very little to do with the weight and had everything to do. And it's tricky because it did have a little bit to do with the weight, not because you were repulsed by the weight, but because the extra weight I was carrying, I felt insecure. And so looked to you to make me feel secure, and you were nowhere. And so it just, this tornado of chaos started happening. And so when I worked on myself, before I even lost the weight, I gained an appreciation for the body that I had. It wasn't perfect, but it had carried 3 beautiful, healthy babies into this world. It wasn't like I'm lying to myself saying, oh, you're so skinny. It was an appreciation for what this body has managed to bring me through so far. Yeah. But back to my point about, I started this journey wanting to save the marriage, wanting to get your attention, to get you back. And along the way, I started to feel so good about who I was becoming that you coming back was a bonus byproduct. It wasn't my number one focus anymore. The other thing that allowed me to do was get off your roller coaster. Because if you're doing it for the other person, then when he doesn't notice, you're flattened. When he doesn't respond, you're flattened. When he's having a bad day and takes it out on you, you immediately internalize that, what have I done wrong? Whereas if I'm doing this for me, I can separate my value, who I am as a person and what I contribute to this world, from this person's behavior. And so it transitioned from desperately wanting to save the marriage to being so excited for my future, being so excited for who I was becoming. I didn't think it was possible. I just thought I was going to be an angry, hateful, bitter cow for the rest of my life.
Sure, that's really good. So just before we carry on, I did mention spirograph and dancing. I just want to say that one of the analogies that we use is, if your toxic marriage is the waltz and the two of you have been waltzing, if you stop the waltz and you start the foxtrot, it's impossible to continue waltzing. It'll take time, and depending on how stubborn your spouse is, and depending on how deep in limerence or in love with someone else they are, like the various factors of how long it's going to take. But eventually have to stop waltzing and have to start the foxtrot. So.
And the importance with that analogy is that what you're doing there is you're raising the standard at which you operate. You're raising, like, I am no longer going to come down to your level and meet you at angry. I'm not going to come down to your level and meet you at frustration. I want you to come up to my level where there's understanding, where there's communication, where there's wevalidation. And that takes a while. It takes a while.
Okay, so at a high level, we'll go into detail in another video, but talk quickly about, we talk about you worked on yourself. Talk about what that looked like, so that people watching this video can have a practical application, walk away with something that they can actually go and do right now.
Okay. So there's a couple of areas of attraction, but we've sort of narrowed it down to an important 5. And for me, the most important one is your spiritual attraction. Your spiritual attraction doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I go to church. It doesn't mean that. What it means is, do you live consistently with whatever it is that you believe? So when a serial killer murders people, he is living consistently with what he believes is the good, right, true thing to do. So when you are a Christian, like in our case, and you claim the name of Jesus, but you are living in unforgiveness and you are living in hate, you are opposing the very beliefs and values you claim to have. So it's about really digging deep and figuring out, what is it that I believe? And then lining your life up and that can be difficult. Like, society and the world can skew certain beliefs. Like, I know, for example, I believed forgiveness was weakness. I was like, oh, forgiveness is pathetic. People who forgive are weak. And the truth is, the man who hung on the cross and died for you, for me, for this entire world, forgave people in that moment.
Yeah.
That's not weakness. If anything, that must have taken a tremendous amount of strength. And so that really challenged my belief about forgiveness is weakness, which had been poisoned by the world. There is not a single show or movie or maybe even circumstance where you, like your cousin or your sister or your aunt or your mother even, that people haven't gone the vendetta route when there's been some sort of infidelity, get him back or take him for everything he's got, or, that's just the way those kinds of behaviors are dealt with in that industry, in the movie industry, and the infamous Friends, we were on a break, thing.
Yeah.
Like, and how long that thread ran through that entire series.
Yeah.
I was just so grateful at the end when they did the whole forgiveness thing and ended up back together. But the point is that that's what society tells us to do in this situation. Is they cheated, once a cheat, always a cheat, kick him to the curb, get yourself a new person. But no one considers that if you heal from that, you can have the most incredible relationship afterwards. So that's spiritual. The next most important area of attraction is your emotional. And this one is very self-reflective. Who am I? When I'm around people, what kind of emotions am I evoking? And if you are a negative, complaining, resentful, angry person, you are not evoking happy-go-lucky emotions in people around you. And sometimes we can get into the space and not even realize that we're there. So this is about digging deep, about what's going on in your heart, and it's about healing past hurts. It's about healing current hurts. It's about choosing who you want to be. Choosing your responses over just reacting.
It's really good.
The next most important is the intellectual attraction. Can I hold a conversation? Am I interested in the same things? I mean, this is something we hear all the time on coaching calls. Oh, we have nothing in common because he likes house music and I like classical, But the truth is, when you were dating, you did pay attention to and were interested in the things that they did. So dating isn't fake. You're not faking an interest in this. You genuinely are, because of the way you feel for this person. But over time, with kids and careers and all kinds of things, that fades. And it can leave people feeling very disconnected. So it's important to keep that intellectual attraction going.
Sure. So just to interject, when your marriage is in crisis and perhaps you're separated and your spouse wants nothing to do with you, there are two kind of legs to intellectual attraction. The one is for you, which is the focus, right? Read a book, learn a language, start a course, grow yourself intellectually, become the most interesting person in the room, so to speak, for yourself. There is, however, when the door opens and the opportunity arises, a doorway for you to connect intellectually with your spouse. So this thing that you're talking about now, dating and actually being interested intellectually in what your spouse is interested in, we have a great story like that as part of our story. Folks who've seen our story know that I'm a musician, and I used to be a massive U2 fan. It was like my favorite band in the world, and you hated music because in the music industry because of the toxicity that it brought into our marriage. And so it was really a bone of contention between the two of us. And when we were separated, as part of your intellectual attraction, you learned some things about you too. And you would drop them in conversation. I'd drop the kids off and you would say something like, hey, did you know Bono has a son and his son's in a band? And I'd be like, who the heck is this woman? First of all, it frustrated the heck out of me. I didn't want you to be nice to me. So again, the focus is not necessarily in the beginning of your stand while your spouse is vilifying you. This is not necessarily the focus, but when the door opens, learn a little bit about fishing or dancing or U2 or crocheting or
it's
the
also
Steelers.
The least threatening way to connect with your spouse when they want nothing to do with you, when the only thing you get to discuss is kids and stuff that's going wrong with the house. This is one of the least threatening ways to communicate. So if they're into vintage cars and you do some research and see that there's a vintage car show, just drop, hey, I saw there's a vintage car show in the next town over. You should really go. You'll love it. And then it's not she's trying to fix the marriage or this is her. It's just, look, you're going to be friends with this person for the rest of your life anyway, especially when there are kids involved. So build on that friendship. And that's where intellectual attraction can play a huge role in sort of reconnecting.
Yeah, it's good.
The fourth area of attraction is physical. And I don't want the fact that it's in fourth place for you to make you think that it's not important. It is. Physical attraction is important. You want to look nice, smell nice, be taking care of yourself. But
which is really hard when you're in crisis, right? Mm-hmm. Getting out of bed is tough. Showering is tough. Washing your hair is tough. So you don't even, it doesn't even have to be rocket science. You don't have to sign up for a gym or anything. Hydrate. I interrupted you.
No, go. It's good what you're saying. It's really good. The main thing about physical attraction is how do I feel about myself? Because if I am attacking myself with my internal voice every single day, oh, you're so fat, you're so ugly, you're so fat, you're so ugly. It doesn't matter how many compliments you give me, they're going to fall on deaf ears. Yeah. I'm moving the compliment bucket around. You cannot get one in. And if you do happen to get one in, I'll bat it. I'll be like, oh, you look pretty today. And I'll be like, you my hair. My hair's a mess. Or, but I put on weight or something. And that comes from what I think about me. And it sounds silly, but taking care of yourself physically will absolutely create more attraction between you and your spouse. But the thing that makes me most excited about is the attraction you're going to get for yourself. I had never understood that you should love yourself thing, because all I ever did was my internal voice was like the mean girl bully in high school. And I was like, where did she come from? I would never speak the things that I think about myself to any other person, ever.
It's good.
Like, why on earth do I say it to myself, right? And so when you start working on yourself physically, in my case, it was just drinking water. I knew I wasn't going to be able to hit the gym. I was in terrible shape. And so just something as simple as I'm drinking water, which is taking care of myself, and I'm taking care of myself because I'm worth taking care of. Changes everything.
Yeah, so good. And I love what you were saying about the fact that taking care of yourself physically is less about how you look and more about how you feel. And what's really important about that is we are not advocating for, well, now we have to set some crazy unrealistic standard, and dudes, you have to end up on the Men's Health magazine cover, and ladies, you have to end up on a catwalk in Paris. This is not about comparing yourself to anybody, especially, hear me, especially not if your spouse has left you for somebody else. You're not in competition with anyone. You are in competition with yourself and the goals that you set and achieve.
Yeah.
That's the point. How do you feel about yourself is really, really important. I love that you said that.
Absolutely. The last area of attraction is your social attraction. Now, this one will naturally increase and get better if you work on the first four. So often we don't have to do too much in this area to grow as long as we're working on those other four. However, for us introverts, it can be off-putting. I remember being very pained by and betrayed by so many people that I became distrusting of anyone. And so I had whittled my friendship circle down to like one person, and she lived in New Zealand. That's a good enough distance away from my husband. And that's not very attractive. You're extroverted and you want to go out and meet people. And I'm thinking, I just want to stay home because I know that no one in this house is going to steal my husband away from me. And all of that is because that internal voice is constantly telling me you're not attractive and you're not good enough. And so you see how by just working on those four things, I became more open to putting myself out there. That's when I started taking the dance class, because I wasn't so afraid anymore of what are people going to think. And I ended up having a ball and making new friends, and it was amazing, and learning to trust people. Learn, and here's the key with trusting people, is I learned to trust them, but at the same time, I learned to have grace when they hurt me. Because if you try to trust people and think they're never going to hurt you, you're setting yourself up for major disappointment, major failure. And that's part of your social attraction, is if you discard people the minute they make any kind of mistake, that's not very attractive. You know, it doesn't give your spouse very much confidence that you'd be able to forgive them if they ever made a mistake.
Yeah.
So social attraction is just as important. And I think that the 4 areas absolutely will improve it. But for us introverts, you need to possibly put yourself out there more than an extrovert would. An extrovert would just naturally have that one under control. But for introverts, you may need to put a little more effort in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so you want to set goals in those 5 areas. And again, we're not going to dive deep into it now. We'll do that in a later video, but it's really important to set goals and make sure that they're smart goals. They're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Track them so that you start building some momentum in those 4 areas that will help you take your focus off of your spouse and your marriage that's in chaos, and help you to focus on yourself and build some momentum and growth, which is what we're after.
And I know that seems incredibly counterintuitive. We're saying the best way for you to save your marriage is to stop trying to save your marriage.
Yeah.
And that's like, what do you mean? That's the issue. Surely I should be focusing on that issue and that issue alone. There is nothing you can do at this point to convince your spouse otherwise, or to change their perception of you. And so use this time wisely to become healthy, to become happy, so that I know you say that you saw the changes, but you never let on that you were noticing the changes. What I tell clients is it matters. Even if you think he doesn't notice, even if they say things like it's too little too late, it matters. Because when the fog lifts and they check the last 6 months of their lives and they see how consistent you have been in these changes, it matters.
Yeah, absolutely it matters. I mean, I said 4 or 5 months into our separation, you had been working on yourself and become accepting and kind and forgiving. And I was vilifying you, and it was messing with the narrative in my mind. And I remember saying to a friend of mine, I'm so frustrated. I'm trying to hate the woman, and she's becoming my best friend. And so it really was messing with put me in a state of cognitive dissonance, which meant there was no peace about the decision I was making, which is
I'm so sorry for torturing you like that.
It is the greatest torture in the world. So yes, I 100% agree with you. Here's the key though, is you didn't know.
No,
right?
I had no idea.
You had no idea. You're just like, this dude is not responding well at all to my changes. But meanwhile, internally in my life, it was already the waves were already crashing and the ocean was being stirred and the ground, whatever. I'm using all the wrong analogies, but you know what I'm saying.
There is literally no lose for you. You work on yourself and you become your spouse's best friend. And that is the best opportunity for your marriage to reconcile. But even if it doesn't, can you imagine you guys get divorced and you're still best friends? That is the best possible outcome for a divorce situation for the children, right?
Sure.
Even more so if you end up meeting somebody else. Like attracts like. So you are the best version of yourself. You are healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically, all of those ways. You are going to attract someone who is also healthy, and you're going to end up in an amazing relationship. Now, I know that's not what we're here for, but I'm trying to point out that there is literally no lose for you working on yourself.
Absolutely.
At all.
Absolutely. That's really good.
Yeah.
So in summary, you cannot change your spouse. Stop focusing on that. Stop trying to do it. Stop trying to manipulate. Stop wondering and ruminating and losing sleep over how you get them to change. You focus on yourself. You work on yourself. You decide who you want to be. You work on those 5 areas of attraction, become the best version of yourself. And that naturally is a pull. And it attracts people towards you. And there is no lose in that situation. So if you want some help in getting that done and putting a plan in place, we coach. There's links down below. We'd love to meet with you and walk with you. And we also have a membership. There's a link below as well. And see you in the next video.